Hello, today we will be graphing with some negatives included. Happy early exit Wednesday. So the overall process for graphing an equation is we make a table, we look at the x-axis, we plug in values from that x-axis, usually starts at 0, and then we plug in 1, 2, 3. If there's a fraction, then we know we plug in a different second number, and then we use that slope, the rise over run pattern to get additional points. So we have a basic equation, y equals negative 2x plus 5. We look at the x-axis. We see that it starts with 0. I always recommend starting with 0. It'll make things easy. We plug that into the x. We get negative 2 times 0 plus 5, and that gives us 5. There's our first point. And then we plug in the number 1. When we plug in the number 1, we get negative 2 times 1 plus 5, which gives us 3. 1, 3. There is our next point. 1, 3. There we go. Then we can use the pattern to get another one. Notice we have a fraction now as our slope / rate of change in front of the x, so that means that we still plug in numbers. We can still start with 0. 1/2 times 0 plus 5 gives us 5. There's our first point. So you'll notice that we always start on that y-axis on that number. And then instead of plugging in 1, because that would give us a decimal, we plug in the number 2. When we plug in 2, that gives us 6. And if you want to know how to show the work without using the calculator, these 2's cancel. Ends up being 1 plus 5, giving us 6. 2, and then 6. We use that pattern to get some more points. Beautiful. And then whenever we have equations that are in standard form, remember we can't graph it, or at least we've been learning to graph these by converting it to slope-intercept form first. So to convert this to slope-intercept form, we subtract 4x on both sides. Those will cancel out in the top left, those negative 4x's. 10 minus 4x are not like terms, so we just write them separate, 10 minus 4x. And then we've got to get rid of this 2, so we are going to divide that 2 to both sides. And so when we divide that 2, right, it cancels out here. We do the 10 divide 2, that's going to give us 5. 4 divide 2, and that will give us 2. So there's our equation. And then we graph it the same way as we did the previous ones. We plug in the number 0. 5 minus 2 times 0 is 5. We plug in the number 1. 5 minus 2 times 1 is 3. So there are 2.05, 1, 3. Follow the pattern to get another point. And so note how none of these graphs really included negative numbers. At least the 0 term was not negative, and so today we're going to be practicing graphing equations that do include negatives. So here we have y equals 1 over 7x minus 3, and so remember, even though these include some negatives, and the graph is extended now, we still have the same process. We still have a table, we still plug in 0. Right, so you have 1 over 7 times 0 minus 3. Just put that in the calculator and you get negative 3. Right, and so if you want, you can like rename these axes to day and money if that kind of helps you visualize it, because I know we've used a lot of day and money examples, and you can kind of rewrite like this. If you want, so that means on day 0 you have negative $3, right? So day 0, negative $3 right there. So the first point's always on that y-axis. And then since we have a fraction here, we plug in the number 7. 1 over 7 times 7 minus 3, put that in the calculator. But once again, if you want to know how to show the work, you can cancel those 7's. 1 minus 3 gives us negative 2. So you get 7 and then negative 2. So once again, if it helps, you can think of going to day 7, which is this axis right here. And then your money is negative $2. So once you get to that day 7, you go down to negative 2. Boom. There you go. So your x is 7, your y is negative 2. And then if you wanted, you could get more points, right? Over 7 down 1, over 7 down 1. There you go. Now we have y equals negative 1 over 6x minus 8. Once again, the process is still the same. Equation is simply a collection of points. So we plug in 0. When we plug in that number 0, we get negative 8, right? So we have 0 down to negative 8. There's our first point. Right. Once again, if you want, you can relabel these to day, because we used a lot of day examples. You could relabel the Y to money, or even like temperature or something. Maybe temperature is a little more intuitive because it's negative, and you have temp here. That works, sure. Right, so on day 0, temperature is -8, and then now we plug in the number 6, because that's the denominator number, right? So we plug in the denominator number, and so when you plug in that 6, we see here that those 6's are going to cancel. -1 minus 8 is -9, so we get 6, -9. So we go to day 6, that's right there, and then the temperature is going to be down to -9, down to -9, right there. So now we can see the day is 6, the temperature is -9, perfect. And then we can follow the pattern, up 1 over 6, up 1 over 6, bing, bang, boom. Last one. 2x minus 7, so this is just a regular slope, no fraction, so we can plug in 0 and 1. When you plug in 0, we get -7. When you plug in 1, we get -5. So 0 down to -7 is our first point. And then 1 down to -5 is our next point. And then, if you wanted, you could get more points, up 2 over 1, as such. Boom, boom, boom. Great. Nothing like a nice line. Thank you for listening.